Hello everyone, I'm Charlie, and welcome back to another DraftKings UCL DFS slate to break down. We are on now day two of the new Champions League format, and I had a really fun day one for DFS at least. And yeah, so let's get into this slate. We go again now. In terms of the big favorite, it is Celtic. It's super interesting because of that. I like this expanded format, opening it up to a lot of teams in good spots now, rather than just your typical Man City, PSG, who are still both in good spots at minus 270 and minus 189, respectively. And as well as this Dortmund Brugge game with both teams at plus odds, but Dortmund slightly favored at plus 105. In terms of lineups and set pieces for PSG, if it's this lineup, it should be Dembele Monopoly, potentially Asensio splitting, potentially Vitinha or Ruiz or even Hakimi hopping on a set or two, but mostly Dembele. However, if we see Lee Kang in here, he'll have Monopoly. We saw that over the weekend. He had like 9 corners or something and like 13 crosses or some crazy number. But I don't expect him to play really. He's not really a starter usually. I assume they played him that last game over the weekend because they were saving some of their other starters for this game. For Girona, it should be Sigankov Monopoly. And I can't imagine really it ending up being anything else unless maybe Porto is in and he might split, but it should just be Sigankov. Celtic. It should just be an Arne Engels Monopoly. They used to have Matt O'Reilly being like their main set piece taker guy, but now that he's off to Brighton, they brought in Engels and he's kind of taken over that role as kind of that box to box set piece taking midfielder. And for Slovan, oh God, Bratislava, it should be Tolic and maybe Barshegian, maybe Vice taking a thing or two, but Tolic is their main guy. If you were in the FSI Discord, he was like a great play for the UCL qualifying slates where Slovan did pretty well. That's how they got here, and Tolic like stood on his head multiple times for them. Now for Brugge Dortmund, it should be the Kuiper Monopoly. He's like not the most attacking fullback on paper, but he gets decently forward. Gets a lot of tackles and takes set pieces, and that's just good enough to get good points usually for him. And for Dortmund, it should be mostly Gross with maybe Brandt taking a couple. Now City, De Bruyne and Savinho probably split if it's this lineup. De Bruyne taking the slight majority of set pieces, but Savinho definitely gets his share in there. If he's not in, it should just be De Bruyne taking everything, unless Bernardo plays a couple short or Foden is back and takes a couple. But De Bruyne is the main guy. I think we all know that at this point. And for Inter Milan, with DiMarco injured now, it should be a Çalhanoğlu monopoly. There's a small chance we get like a Carlos Augusto split, but I don't remember him taking really any set pieces last season. So I expect it just to be Çalhanoğlu. Prices. Now, the big decision always is, do you play Erling Haaland? He's like had the best start to a season he's ever had, and just scoring goals like every game for club or country almost. And he's tempting for sure. I think the decision here is between him and Dembele. Like Savinho is not bad either. I just think he's a little much considering he was like 2K cheaper in like a better matchup for Man City over the weekend. Now he's playing Inter Milan and he's more expensive. Like I'd go Dembele or Holland over Savinho for sure. And then when it comes to which of Holland or Dembele to play, it's tough. Floor versus ceiling. Well, I'll not make a decision. Probably it's like 5 minutes to lock. But those are like the main two cash option forwards. And because of those guys, it makes kind of almost everyone else irrelevant for cash. Like Palma, if he starts as a potential that he ends up taking some set pieces. He's a little expensive though. Asensio, kind of same thing. And then yeah, like Barcola, I don't think is bad for like GPP leverage because he's so cheap. Same with Yankov. Furuhashi, I don't think is bad considering the matchup. Biggest favorites on the slate. Same with Maeda. Like the Celtic guys are cheap, which makes the not bad options. But the big ones are Holland and Dembele. They're for mids, De Bruyne, most expensive midfielder. Probably just playing him in like 80% or like 90% of your GPP builds, scoring him or playing him in cash. Like he's the safest quote unquote player, quote unquote safest player on the slate just because takes set pieces, he's just gets a ton of points, gets a ton of goal contributions. Look at his logs too. 40 point average is insane. So yeah, De Bruyne, love him as usual. And then after that, Gross is fine. I think he's a little expensive. Lee Kang In, I think is a little expensive considering he does take set pieces, but like that's kind of all he offers. Doesn't get a ton of goal contributions. Calhanoglu, tough matchup. I'm like struggling to really find more than a handful of guys I really like in this slate. Like Fabian Ruiz, I think his bet is fine. I mean, Tolic, if he was like a 3K option instead of a 5K option, I'd love him. But it's a tough matchup, and I still might be swayed into playing some shares of him, but he's probably fairly priced at 4,800 rather than a bargain. Now, Arne Angles, this is a bargain. Well, likely Monopoly set taker. He is on penalties, as we saw over the weekend for Celtic. And super cheap for the set taker on the biggest favorite on the slate. Give me all of the Arne Angles. Then after that, like Vanaken for GPP is not bad. And then kind of not really liking the rest of it. Like I'll start a lot of my builds just with De Bruyne angles, like a ton of them, because I just don't love many of the other midfielders. For defender, Hakimi's the best pay up. Like there's the Man City guys, but they're just not great. And if it's this lineup, they're gonna offer almost nothing because these wing backs are not defenders and they're gonna be basically on the wing, and because of that, Akanji and Gvardiol will be sitting back a lot. And Gvardiol's expensive and Akanji is not bad priced, but definitely not anything to write home about. Rico Lewis, if he plays, is always a fine option just for Man City exposure and considering he gets up the pitch a decent amount. And then the big name that I'm looking at here is Maxime de Kuiper. Monopoly set taker, 3,600. Not the best matchup, but I expect Dortmund to make the game pretty end-to-end, which is good for DFS points, which should help de Kuiper a lot if Brugge get a lot of corners, gets a ton of crosses and key passes. For this cheap, like he will probably be in my core. Then like not a ton of other mids I like. De Kuiper's the big one for me. Then Hakimi's the big pay up I like, and then everything else is kind of whatever. Probably go for a Celtic guys maybe is like the next best options. Like Taylor is not bad at 4K. Johnston is great at 3,100. That's a good option. Like you could go to Kuiper and Johnson as your two defenders, and that'd be a great start to a build. I feel like it gets a lot of salary afforded to playing some big attackers. Goalies, crapshoot as usual. We saw today that like every team did score in the main slate. I think Courtois was the highest scoring keeper with like giving up a goal, making like a ton of saves. I know that Israel, the sporting keeper, was up there. I pay down for Newble. We did fine at 6. Like I don't ever mind paying down for goalie or paying up. Just whatever you land on, it's always fine. And in terms of a core, I said one of them. I'm putting into Kuiper. Like I like Monopoly set taker, especially for defender for sub 4K. Cheapest set taker on the slate, as a matter of fact. So give me all the Kuiper, then De Bruyne, and then Angles. I'll leave forward pretty open ended considering it's hard to cram both Dembele and Holland. I think it's doable, but more likely than not, you're gonna have to make a stand on one of them, and you can do that with this core. And yeah, guys, that'll be it. Good luck, and I'll see you for the next video. Bye.